final edition of the ComicCorp Podcast. I am your host, as always, Chad Bordo, and joining me is the glorious one himself, Marcus Green. Marcus, we say goodbye to the old way of doing things, the archaic way of doing things, and we will be revamping the show, starting with a full series review of Legion here in the next few weeks. No firm date has been announced.
Yeah, Legion of Superheroes, the animated series.
That one, because there's other Legions, and I should have been more clear. We're not reviewing the Angel movie, and we're not reviewing that short-lived FX show. Nope, cartoons are on deck. But before we get there, we got to get through Stargirl season finale, the Doom Patrol season finale, and the finale of Y: The Last Man. Ugh. So, without getting into spoilers, I can say that both Stargirls and Doom Patrol season finales worked. For vastly different reasons. Ironically enough, Doom Patrol's season finale was not its actual season finale, but it worked as a season finale because it left on a little bit of a cliffhanger. Stargirl's season finale worked as a tell-all to possibly, in case the series didn't get a second season. They made sure that everything was wrapped up in a nice little bow, but also So if they had known that there wasn't going to be a season 2, they could easily have cut out that last 30 seconds of the episode, and we would have been pretty, happy with what we got. So altogether, the season finales worked. That's just my opinion.
Yeah, we hoping for a season 3, because obviously Stargirl got a season 2, but we hoping for a season 3 of Doom Patrol. I personally think it'll be criminal for them not to get a season 3. But things are shaky to say the least at DC right now, and this is with probably one of their biggest events ever coming up in the next few weeks. So, the next couple of weeks. So it's a unique pickle to be in. Maybe we'll get some news from there. So,
and that's partly why we're ending the show in its format because of the fact there is a lot of uncertainty in the comic book industry entirely. Marcus, if I remember correctly, DC and Warner Brothers cut a lot of their workforce this week, right? This week, or was it last week?
I think it was, this week. It was this week.
So. Part of the whole thing is the old mantra that's been creeping up is get woke, go broke. And there's a lot of truth to that because there's a lot of changes that were made to DC Comics specifically and Marvel that pushed away audiences. Their over-reliance on certain events, their over-reliance on variant books, their treatment of the comic book shops that essentially bought and paid for those books. And it became pretty obvious that they don't know what they're doing anymore. They started to use the comic books as a lifestyle brand, but failed to realize that, if you're marketing to a certain group of people, maybe market to that certain group of people. It's like, remember when Spike TV was the guys network and how great that was? 1,000 Ways to Die. What was that Warrior Combat show that they had? Do you remember that? What was that name? Like they'd put like a Roman gladiator and like a Spetsnaz, Secret Service agent in like the fighting realm, and like who would win? It was cool as shit. They had UFC and Impact Wrestling, like it was cool. Blue Mountain State and Blade. Okay, one of those is good.
Yeah.
But they knew who their market was. Now imagine if that was their scene, and then they're like, and also wife swap, but not the kind of wife swap most guys would be interested in. No, that hacky-ass reality show where one wife moves into the other house and goes, we're going to go vegan, and everyone hates her. Or imagine putting Lifetime movies on the Guy Network. Who are you trying to get the eyes of? That's part of what's been happening with the comic book industry. They keep thinking that the people buying their movie tickets are the same people buying their comic books. Spoiler, they're not. There's a reason why, Captain Marvel gets 10,000 buys a month, or why Batgirl gets 12,000, or why Batwoman gets 6,000. Because that ain't your market, homie. I don't know why I always go Nick Diaz when I'm trying to prove a point, but I do. And I take so much pride in that. DC Comics selling Wolf tickets.
Yeah, they are. I mean, it was even worse. You're talking about like go woke, go broke. It's getting to the point where like these creators were apparently, because I've seen other people do videos on this, because it has been like this ain't something that just happened overnight. This has been a building trend.
For
And
5,
like
6, 7 years.
yeah, and apparently some of these creators, and I'm pretty sure you've seen this, like are lashing back at people on Twitter about differing opinions over a book, which is very subjective because not everything is gonna gel with everybody. Like just because you make a character gay, that doesn't mean the book is good. Of course, we've talked about that numerous times with the Soul CW audience. Just because they got 7 characters, all the different ethnicities, that don't mean the show is worth a damn in terms of narrative quality. So,
And I think part of the problem is there's too much tribalism on both sides of the line. You have people like me and you, Marcus, who sit in a very abstract form of thought where we go, yeah, that's common sense, duh. But then you have people on one side trying to frame the narrative into only one specific kind of frame, and then the other side of the narrative is being framed in that specific frame. And neither side seems to realize that there is give and take, and both of their opinions are largely incorrect. The narrative that comic book fans are fascist, white, elitist, we don't want no minorities in this group is wholly incorrect. And the idea that comics are disrespecting characters is wholly incorrect. Part of the problem is when we start having these conversations, people aren't able to have nuanced discussions. Marcus, you and I can have a pretty nuanced discussion. We're pretty fucking smart. But a lot of people aren't. When you and I talk about representation in comics, we both kind of have the same idea of that's a good thing. But you don't need to take away from a group of people to make another group of people feel included. Create new space, don't take away space. And that seems to be lost on a lot of creators. So instead of making a gay character who stands out and can be someone you can, yeah, DC's done it twice. Technically 1.5, depending on how you want to view Midnighter, because he was not a DC creation originally. But Midnighter and Batwoman were 2 gay characters who were created to be gay and were always gay. There was no version of them, Batwoman aside, because Batwoman did have a 60s, 70s version, but it was terrible. No one liked it. But they didn't have a prior version just a year or 2 prior that were popular, and then they reinvented. They introduced them and said, here's your gay characters that you've been wanting. Support these books, or we're going to know that you don't want to actually buy books about gay characters. Marvel, on the other hand, goes, oh, you guys like Bobby Drake? We're going to make him gay. And, oh, you guys like Bobby Drake? We're going to make sure that Jean Grey mind rapes him so he knows he's gay. What? Wait. Hang on. What? So, on one side, you get what you want. DC gave you 2 prominent gay characters. Granted, they didn't sell because people weren't interested. But they gave them to you. And on the flip side, Marvel's like, no, we're just going to give you a gay character that you didn't want, who's already had 60 years of history, and we're just going to be, quote-unquote, progressive. No, that's pandering, and now you ruined a character, and you took away someone's favorite character because you augmented them into something they weren't. It's like sitting here and saying, well, do you like cats? I love cats. Who's your favorite fictional cat? Garfield. Oh, that's cool. We're going to make him a mongoose. I don't like mongooses, though. But we're going to make him a mongoose. He's still going to be Garfield. He's going to eat lasagna. Why don't you like it? Because you changed the core essence of the character. Oh, yeah, you're mongoose phobic. No, I just like cats. Like, that's the fucking conversation people aren't having. And people don't realize that there's some nuance to that. You can't just take away a character's established history, give them something new that they didn't want, and then go, well, if you don't like it, you're a bigot. That's pretty fucking bigoted. And don't be, fucking, terse with us, because we'll fucking tell you that if you tell me that John Henry Irons is going to be turned into a white dude with blonde hair who, I don't know, came from Alaska and really liked the idea of, like, what's that dude who played Alfred in Batman Superman? Gregory Irons? Is that his name?
Jeremy Irons, yeah.
Jeremy Irons. We're gonna have a white dude named John Henry Irons, and he's a real big fan of Jeremy Irons. and that's why he becomes a superhero. I'm gonna be fucking livid.
I'll piss you off even more than that. Or make John Henry Irons a trans woman who disdains hammers and gets rid of his because it's too much of a representation of a phallic domination.
Oh yeah, both those will piss me the fuck off. Because I love the idea that John Henry Irons was this dude who was in the military, and he detests the idea of killing so much that he went home to his whole neighborhood that's wrought with crime and devastation, wants to do good. And instead of going to work for a weapons company because he was getting offers, he just goes to become a construction worker because he likes being blue collar. I'm blue collar. I love that shit. And then like one day Doomsday shows up to beat the shit out of Superman. And John Henry's like, all I got is John Sledgehammer. Boy, I'm gonna go crack some alien skulls. Don't even fucking doubt me. Bet, son. Then, he doesn't get the chance to help out, and he feels real bad about it. And he's like, I'm going to take up the mantle of the S because Superman saved my life once, and I want to repay, because he's awesome. And then he goes and starts being a hero. Like, that, I fucking love that story. Like, that's a great fucking story. You take that story away, I'm a fucking rage. Rage so hard. It has nothing to do with the fact that he's black. It has nothing to do with Bobby being straight and white. It has to do with the fact that you established a character. You've been selling this character, and now you're going to change the character because you have determined that my view, my money, my life is not, quote-unquote, what you want for that character. It is insulting. Now, if you say, here's Bobby Drake, he's Iceman, now here's, Dobby Brake, and he's Fireman, that's terrible. So sorry. And he's gay, but he's going to be Bobby Drake's best friend. That's fine. That's cool. Cool. He's going to get his own book, too. That's cool. I'm good. Maybe I'll read it. Maybe I won't. But that's how you create new fan bases, not altering established lore. Now, if you wanted to kill Bobby Drake off and have Dobby Brake, or whatever the fuck dumb name I came up with, be the new Iceman, again, fine. Just don't change core characters. And I think that's the problem with a lot of, industry leaders. They don't get that. That's why mangas are so successful. They don't try to reboot Goku. They know he's dumb. They know he likes the food. They know that he's going to do dumb things in a fight, like letting the bad guy go back to full health because he's dumb. But they're not going to change that. It's been 35 years. Goku's always going to throw his senzu bean at his main opponent because he wants him at his best. He's fucking dumb, but we love him.
Dragon Ball's up there, man, with Power Rangers, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. These properties still hold true. Mm-hmm. And it's funny, too, because I think a lot of times as well, and I think you'll agree with this, like, they try to use the woke train, getting on the woke train as a way of saying, like, this is our way of being more creative. No, it's a way of being lazy, because if you were creative, you would come up with a whole new story and whole new ideas to go off with, instead of just hijacking these characters and being like, it's time for a change. I'm like, yeah, but you can use change as a way to bring in something new, as opposed to offending people's established law, like you said, the Bobby Drake thing. I'm pretty sure that, it's been a unique line of seeing like the gender and race transitions from the books to the TV screens and movie screens. But it's been far more egregious on the comic side because it's like they're picking at people with it. Like, what was the last thing they dropped? Those what was the name of those young Marvel heroes?
Oh, the New Mutants, I think.
The New Mutants. And just the perfect representation of everything that's wrong right now.
Safe Space and Snowflake. Oh God.
Be negative.
And that one was like a cool design too. Like, he's like a rad little punk kid, but he's be negative. And you're right. Like the one thing I keep seeing over and over and over and over and over and over and over again. Well, if you take this character who's a white straight dude and you make him into a black trans woman, imagine all the new stories you can tell. What new stories? Shakespeare, or I think it was Shakespeare who said there's only 4 stories in the world you can tell. So what new stories are you adapting? Are you adapting the fact that she would now have to deal with a villain? That ain't new. Are you going to tell a story where they're going to have a romantic interest? That ain't going to work. Are you going to have a story where they're going to deal with crisis of self? not a new story. So, like, what new stories can you tell? Like, if you changed Barry Allen to Wally West in The Flash, like, what are you going to do? Have, like, a couple episodes where Wally's going to deal with issues that plague specifically only black people? All right, cool. But how is that going to help, broaden the conversation, bring in new fans when you're having targeted, isolated conversations? That's part of the problem when you're dealing with large format shows. It's hard to have those smaller conversations, and I mean smaller in terms of numbers affected, not in terms of importance. It's harder to have those types of shows that have a ability to reach beyond its intended audience, especially in today's climate. Because too often we now have so much bipartisan, tribalistic mindsets that we don't really want shows that talk about specific issues. Mostly because we see it so much in media and social media and our day-to-day lives that we use entertainment now more than ever than an escape. Let's go back to Fresh Prince of Bel-Air. A lot of us, I watched that first run. I didn't watch the news when I was 6. Shocking. I wasn't inundated with a lot of social issues. I wasn't hearing every day that I'm a straight white cis dude, so I'm evil. I wasn't hearing people say I don't have a culture. I wasn't hearing people denigrate me on a daily basis. So I didn't really have any need to escape from reality. Like, I was pretty kosher. So when I saw, Will Smith deal with, police, what was that? I don't want to say police brutality. It was police overreach, I guess we would call it, when he and Carlton were arrested for driving a car they didn't have any papers for. That didn't hit me in a wrong way because I saw that. I was like, oh, that sucks. I feel for Carlton and Will. Mostly I feel for Will. Carlton's kind of still oblivious. When Will got shot and Carlton went and got a gun, like, I wasn't sitting here going, oh, I'm so sick of the gun violence conversation. I'd never had the gun violence conversation before. So I watched that with fresh eyes and a keen understanding of something that I didn't entirely know. So it was very palatable. And there was a lot of black entertainment on mainstream television back in the 90s. I think people forget that. Because my favorite shows were Smart Guy, Hanging with Mr. Cooper, that fucking LL Cool J show that I always forget the name of. Fresh Prince of Bel-Air. Of course, obviously, you had your Boy Meets World. So, like, all that stuff was differently, digestible at a time period. They were talking about just being good and doing the right thing, and, like, it made so much sense. But now you have so much negativity with those conversations. You have so many people going out and trying to attack as much as they're defending. Now when we have these conversations, there's always the yeah, but, and then you always look at the creators, and they may not always be on the right side of things. So those conversations become a lot more graded. And when you have them on a daily basis, or you're seeing them on a daily basis, then you see them in your entertainment, it's exhausting at times. Because there's no time for you to just decompress and let things kind of absorb. And I think that's part of the problem with modern comics and modern entertainment is that we're constantly being thrown all these different kind of conversations at the same time, but on every level. Like, that's all we're having anymore is these same conversations. And if you've ever been in a relationship, you know that it doesn't matter how many times your girlfriend says take out the trash. That's going to be a sticking point until it's finally taken care of, even if it doesn't need to be taken out yet. And if it's a reoccurring argument, that argument becomes a lot less viable. It becomes a lot less impactful. If that's the same thing you're hitting me for every single day, then I stop caring as much about it because you're not coming at it in a correct way and you're not giving me time to readjust. And I think that's a lot of what's going on with entertainment these days is that we keep looking at it from a 90s perspective. Well, Boy Meets World taught us all these things. Why can't Girl Meets World? Well, because Girl Meets World was made 25 years later in a completely different sociological environment. We have so much media at our fingertips. We can't just enjoy, more poignant conversations in our entertainment like we could in the 90s. Because we're having these conversations all the time now. In the 90s, that's not the case. Marcus, am I off base or do you see where I'm coming from?
Oh, no. I mean, you're right. Look, I mean, we as much as we need, more than ever, we need to watch the news because there's so much effery going on, specifically from the top down. But it can't be an all-consuming thing. Like, you have to decompress, watch some Family Feud, watch some Diners, Drive-In, and Dives, because if you let that consume you, it'll be something that'll never end because there's so many problems with so little solutions. If we do have solutions, it's something that has to be implemented step by step over time, probably beyond our lifetime. Like some of the problems that we're talking about dealing with now are going to be taken up by our grandkids
Mm-hmm.
because they're so deeply inundated in our culture and our country that it's just, we don't necessarily have all the time necessary. But when it comes to media, like a lot of 90s shows just did it so organically within the overall narrative of those stories. Like I remember watching, I don't know if you ever watched A Different World,
Oh yeah.
but they storyline, like you remember the storyline where Dean Cain and his boys sprayed or confronted, um, Wayne and his guy, and it got racist. It got real, real bad. And then they had that great exchange in the cell because they got arrested fighting, and then they came back and they had the N-word sprayed on their car, and it hit different after the conversation that they had because, somebody telling you something and then you actually seeing it, it translates different. But that wasn't necessarily, that was an episode. But it wasn't necessarily something that felt crowbarred in. A lot of times now, it's rare that you get a lot of these messages that don't feel crowbarred in, and we 100% know that art should be reflective of the times. Like
Mm-hmm.
I feel like it'd stupid if a lot of these shows now, like so many shows are gonna come back even perhaps after we're done with COVID and dealing with COVID, because it's just not something you could be, um, flipping it and kind of just push behind. Like I was watching an interview today with a rapper, and he was like, "Look, man, like 2020 is going down in history. Like he was like, our kids are going to be writing papers on 2020."
Yeah.
And it's crazy, but like I said, so many things feel crowbarred in, and like you said, it's so many things and so many problems that we can't talk about all because a lot of times stuff feel crowbarred in, a la God bless their effort, but that gun violence episode of Arrow did not work. And
Because I'm glad you brought that up.
you can't crowbar in something like that in a show where they may or may not be killing all their opposite. The heroes may or may not be killing most of their oppositions throughout the week using some of said things that you're trying to talk against. So it's a unique line. Like I can't wait to get back to this season of The Boys because like, apparently they're going to touch on a lot of topics, but The Boys just has this way of putting it in a realistic way, but at the same time allowing it to weave in and out of the absurdity of the show that it never feels like it's preaching to you. Mostly because it's kind of hard to feel preached to when watching somebody drink, a dead woman's breast milk or something like that. But
Fuck that show. Oh God. The Arrow episode where they had the gun violence debate was so hammy because they didn't have a debate. One character said, "Gun's bad." The other character says, "Gun's good." And Oliver's like, "I'm going to shoot people with arrows. You guys fuck off." Like, it was bad, and it was hammy, and it was stupid. And it was at a time when people were actually having the conversation on every facet. And I think social media has changed the climate around media, at least in terms of the entertainment media, at least the expected entertainment media, not the news media that they call entertainment. When you look at like sitcoms and superhero shows and all that, having social media has changed the narrative around these shows to the point where if you do bring up a topic because it's so talked about on social media, you now inherently take a side that is far more nuanced than you can really explain in a television show. And if you do it, you're going to piss off fans who think that we're having too much of this conversation or we want a breather from it. Or if you don't do it, you're going to piss off the people who think that every show, everything should always have this thing in it until they get their way. So there's so much debate and conflict now on such a higher, plane than we've ever had before when it comes to fandoms. And I think it's time people realize that you can't be political in television anymore if you're making a sitcom or what have you, because all you're going to do is lose half your fan base.
Yeah, it's so interesting, man. Like I said, there's a way to do it. Like and I think the difference is a lot of these shows bring up a topic and then in a lot of ways, whether they mean to or not, kind of tell people what to think about it instead of just laying it out. Like one of the best that final stretch of Sons of Anarchy was they looked past I forgot the guy's name, but he played Aquaman's. He played Black Manta's father, the one black guy that ended up in Sam Crow.
Yeah, because he ran.
Because
What were the Grim Reapers? Was that their gang's name?
yeah, and he got held hostage, I think, by the Pope with Bobby.
Mm-hmm.
We obviously that particular thing ended, but because of his loyalty, by this time their ranks were so dwindled anyway. But it wasn't so much as that, so much it was his loyalty, that his race. It wasn't about letting a black guy into this chapter of it. Like, this is a true brother
Mm-hmm.
to this fact, regardless of what or not he looks like. And then that whole thing with Juice, because that was a whole thing, but he concocted a whole bigger thing in his head, and ultimately it didn't matter. But because of the actions he took, because of his paranoia, it ended up ruining the whole situation. Like, we talked about, this one brick of heroin or cocaine set off a domino effect that the show never could recover from.
Yeah, like that whole incident was what led to the downfall of the club.
Yeah.
And I'm glad you brought up that show, because that show had that one moment, that one defining moment where Chibs, who is an Irishman who got the Glasgow smile, he's like, "Why'd you do it, Juicy Boy?" Because he would always call him Juicy Boy, because he's like 20 something and Chibs is almost 50, so obviously he looks at him as his son. And Juice goes, "I didn't want anyone to find out I'm half black." And Chibs goes, "Wait, that's it? That's the reason?" And Chibs was like, "Oh, you fucking idiot." But the club was made originally with the idea that, they didn't want anyone who wasn't white in the group. But obviously by this point in the show, you had Happy, who, despite his name, super Mexican, super stabby, and he was in the group. I mean, Juice, clearly not white. He was in the group. So, like, the idea was that they had moved off of a lot of the archaic traditions, even though they haven't formally gotten rid of any of the bylaws. But at the season finale, they patched over the head of, I think the group is called the Grim Reapers, but maybe not. But they patched the guy over from his old gang to this gang because of the fact that he's always been there. He's been a stalwart. He's always reliable, and his gang is getting fucked around with from another, from a street gang, because he's a biker gang. That they're like, we need to help out. We need to increase our numbers. They need to have protection. It's a win-win. And they got rid of the bylaw and they brought him in. And the idea was that eventually all the remaining members of his gang would be patched in as well, but not necessarily in Sam Crow, just in other parts of California, because ironically enough, you're talking about Stranger Worlds, right? Was that Different Worlds? Different Worlds was a spinoff of the Cosby Show.
Mm-hmm.
And the Cosby Show had Theo Huxtable. How did you pronounce that name? Huxtable. There we go. It's been a while since I said that word. Theo ended up being the second in command of the Reapers, or whatever they were named, in the last few seasons of Sons of Anarchy. So it's fucking hilarious that we went full goddamn round circle on this one, and we 6 degrees of separation of the Kevin Bacon arc on that one. So, we bring everything back full circle. So and you're right. Like, that's the best way to go about it. Don't tell me what to think. Show me the options and what leads to what. That's one of the reasons why the 90s Star Trek shows were always so popular, was because they didn't ham-fist you any one answer. They would give you very complex, moral, ambiguous kind of situations, and they would say, these are the options. We have to pick one, but it's not necessarily the right option. And it allowed a lot of conversation and debate in a conformed and constructive manner to permeate throughout the fandom. And conversations we're still having to this day. Like, one of the big ones is, on Voyager, 2 members of the crew got combined into one. At first, they didn't think that there was a way to separate them, but then there was a way to separate them. So there wasn't really a good answer. I was like, what do you do now? This person exists, from the essence of 2 other beings, but you can separate them. But this person feels that they're on their own a brand new individual. I never agreed with that concept, but I understand the people who did agree with that concept. So what do you do? Do you try to separate the person, or do you leave the person as is? And that's a great ethical debate, but it's not one that has any real contextual knowledge or a one-to-one comparison to real life because we don't have that kind of technology. But it is kind of that conversation of what do you do? And when you are able to frame that narrative in a what do you do kind of situation, like a choose your own endings in essence, you allow for people to feel a lot more comfortable in the situation when they're viewing it because you're not being berated like a child. And I think that's also part of the problem. When people wag their finger at you and say, you're wrong, I don't care if I know I'm wrong. I'm going to double down because fuck you for telling me what to think. Like Mark is well, not to cut you off, but a great one-to-one comparison for that is the Cleveland Indians name. I've never been a fan of the Indians name. I've never been a fan of the mascot. I like the baseball team, love the baseball team. My favorite team in sports. But every time someone goes, it's racist, change the name, I just go, nah. Mostly because I don't like you telling me that I need to change something. Now, I like it. I want it changed. Don't misconstrue that. I've wanted to change since I was 10, and I learned that Indians was the incorrect term for the people we were trying to represent and show respect for. I was like, well, that's dumb. We're stupid for doing that. But when someone tells me we got to change it, I just go, no, fuck you. Even though I agree with you.
It's a very interesting way of things, and that there's so many nuances to even your point, because obviously when you know better, you do better.
Mm-hmm.
And I think in a lot of ways the reason why it seems like we're getting such an influx of these things repeatedly is because in a lot of ways when we were growing up, we didn't necessarily, or generation before us didn't necessarily have the tools to even identify a lot of the problems that we're openly talking about now, like in specifically like in the black community. I would imagine during slavery and whatnot, depression wasn't a thing.
Mm-hmm.
Like we didn't really have time to deal with that, and in a lot of ways it was looked at as a weakness because you didn't have time to be depressed because you were constantly fighting, and much less or acknowledge it properly. So now we're having so many discussions about mental health because so many people are realizing, there's so many more nuances and things dealing with the human brain and chemistry and chemicals differing and like that, breaking off in the conversation about concussions and how many more viewpoints and things have been opened up about that obviously we're moving in a different direction because we're learning more now. But again, and I was thinking about this, and I was like, 3 of the best shows, hand down to me on TV, is Doom Patrol, The Boys, and The Orville.
Mm-hmm.
Because I don't know if there's 3 better shows that do what we're talking about better than those 3 shows, specifically The Orville. Like, they covered so much great stuff in season 2. Like, I don't know how they just didn't get all the awards. Like just their storyline about the Mocklin gender thing. It's crazy what they went off into and talked about with the nuance and stuff like that. But I think in a lot of ways that's how you do it, because we talk about how bad that gun episode was in Arrow, but this is also a show that really showed what it means to change and what redemption really looks like. Over what a 7-year, 8-year span, what that really looks like for a character who had to become something very dramatically unhealthy to go venture out on a mission towards something that he thought he had to do, and then he had to break down everything of that mold that he had created to ultimately achieve that goal at the end of the day. So it's I don't know, man, it got to be a line. People have to stay on the ball. Like I said, you don't have to cancel everybody unless it's something that truly egregious. But we do have to be more diligent about calling people out, because when you don't, people hold stuff in, and then all of a sudden stuff comes out, and it's like, well, why didn't you say something when this was a thing? It's like, well, now there's not really a precedent for that. Everybody has to speak up because we need these kind of results now, so the next generation can do better than we did. But hopefully, I mean, it sucks to watch this with the comic book industry, but it may be a necessary thing for a potential overall reboot, kind of like what we like flushing out all this crap out of wrestling.
Yeah.
Like we might not need this, like, because I'm pretty sure all this stuff was happening in their minds. It's like, this is what's going to save this industry, and ultimately we're seeing a difference specifically with DC, which is sad because this is a thing that's had characters that's lasted over 80 years.
Mm-hmm.
So it's wacky, man. But I think we're seeing this in just a lot of different forms. But specifically for us, this sucks because we've drawn so much of our life entertainment, and continue to do so off these characters that maybe it is time that television and the film pick up the ball. Where obviously these writers have dropped it in terms of comic books anyway.
Yeah, and I think one of the things that really kind of stands out is the idea or the notion that we have to pick a side when it comes to excuse me, when it comes to how a piece of media is represented. I just read an article, and goddamn it, I know, Marcus, I know I shouldn't have. I'm gonna say it. I'm gonna tell you where I went. You're gonna be like, "Why'd you do that?" And I'm gonna be like, "I know, I shouldn't have. It's bad, dumb." So I went to CBR.
I thought you were about to say we got this covered. Okay, all right, I can deal with that.
No, we got this covered. It's a whole different beast. So I went to CBR and I saw a headline saying that I'm paraphrasing, that the 300 movie is problematic. Right? So I was like, okay. Pourquoi? And what do I see? Well, they're painting people of color. Sorry, they call it, what was it, Pokai now? What's the stupid fucking anagram?
POC?
So, no, it's like POCIC or something like that.
Oh, God, they switched it again. Damn it, they never sent out emails.
Where is the fucking email blast? But the writer's like, it shows people of color to be evil. And I'm like, there was one person of color that I can remember being evil, and it was Xerxes, and Xerxes was from the Middle East. Like, if they had casted a white dude, you would have said, like, that's highly offensive because you're whitewashing. Xerxes was a terrible ruler. Like, I'm sorry, you want him to be portrayed as a good guy? Like, what? Okay. Now, listen, Spartans, not exactly great people, very warmongering. I get it. And it's a fictionalized version of the events of reality that actually happened. And then they're like, well, the deformed Spartan who betrayed them that's ableism. They wouldn't let, basically, I'm paraphrasing what she said. They wouldn't let the disformed individual join their reindeer games.
They told you why they joined the damn reindeer games. He was a walking liability.
Yep.
What are you talking about?
And that was the thing that I think, because it's not an accurate portrayal of the events, and it shouldn't have been, because in a time period back then, there isn't a good or bad side. It's simply two opposing forces of nature. You had the Spartans, and then you had Xerxes' army. Neither side is wholly good or evil in the context of history. They both have done atrocious things. They both had things that made them respectable to a degree. So when you're fictionalizing the story, you have to pick a good and an evil. It's a lot easier to say an invading force is the evil side of things, especially in cinema. So when they had Leonidas, who Gerard Butler played perfectly, tell the guy, like, listen, we're all about that phalanx mentality. My dude, you got a strong thrust arm. Respect. But your shield arm, ugh. Like, if we were picking dodgeball teams, homie, you on my team. But we're playing volleyball, and you only got one working arm, bro. Like, I can't draft you. But I could use you as the manager on the bench. Like, I know it's not playing time, but you still will be part of the team. And what does Hunchback Notre Douchebag do? No, fuck you. I'm going to bring down the Spartan Empire because we've one meeting. Rawr.
That's such a perfect example of where we at, though. Because you rather let him participate and F up the entire defensive line. Mm-hmm. Because they went into that battle knowing it was outnumbered, and they were still winning. It was the damn Hunchback that ultimately got him killed. Mm-hmm. Because he snitched on him. So, that's what we are. No, give him a participation trophy. He ain't even with us shooting in the gym. He can't shoot with us in the gym. What you talking about? Like, you rather let him participate and F up the whole thing so you can say we weren't being hunchback prejudiced than have him sit out so we can win and he can aid us in the bodies, because there are gonna be bodies.
Mm-hmm.
Like, and to me, that's belittling the role that he was offered. Like, that's one of the most important roles in war, is the healer, the
Mm-hmm.
healers, the recovery team. But that's never brought up again. It's narrative. It's like, no, that's hunchback phobia. Like, he sat there in the same thing, told him why, asked him to show him if he could actually do it. In his face, he couldn't do it. And it's like, I'm sorry, my friend, we can't use you. Mother, father, you were wrong. Like, no, you just built bad. You can't do it. Like, you just.
It's about finding how you fit into society, not making society fit to you.
Exactly.
The Hunchback had an opportunity to be a hero, but a different kind of hero. He didn't like that option, so he decided to tear the whole thing down, which is a perfect, emblematic situation that we're seeing for modern media. Oh, it's not catered to me. Burn it down. Calm down, Seth Rollins. By the by, I'm a little offended you didn't give me more hype for the Hunchback and Notre Douchebag. I thought
I dug it. No, I quite did.
I thought that was clever as fuck. But, that's kind of the situation that we're at. It's like, that film is so well made. It's so beautifully told. And it's not supposed to be accurate because, one, it wasn't 300 people. It was about 3,000, give or take. And two, why would I want to watch 3,000 dudes with no personality on a movie screen? Like, they found a right way to bring out all the nuances. They even gave a woman a pretty big standard role. She gives up a part of herself to make sure that the love of her life gets the help he needs. And when she's betrayed, she doesn't just sit there crying in the corner until Leonidas comes home to handle things. She fucking drops a knife into the dude's stomach, and she's like, it won't be over quickly and it will hurt. Like, I'm like, damn, Cersei's a bitch in any generation.
You know how much I love a great callback. And even in the second movie, which I think a lot of people crap on, but I think it's real high quality, it gave whole backstory to Xerxes. Was led beautifully by a stellar performance, in my opinion, by Eva Green, who, really commandeered that movie, and talking about they took it from the land to the Navy battles, and just looking at her backstory of how she was left for dead. In a lot of ways, she kind of was reminded me of Callisto from Xena, where they executed that. But like, we talking about, like, obviously the Hunchback, but. And talking about Xerxes, how about the fact that Xerxes is supposed to be this big bad boss? He ain't even the dude on the front lines. He ain't putting in no work. Like, this ain't. But Zed, Lord Zed didn't fall because he didn't feel like it. But if he got on the battlefield, them episodes would have been shortened. Xerxes sat his ass in a chair and almost had a panic attack because Leonidas caught him from God knows how far on the cheek with a spear that he shouldn't have been able to land in the first place.
Xerxes got a little cut on his cheek from shaving, and he freaks the fuck out.
Let's talk about BS leaders, a la like what we living in right now. But that's not the narrative you're going with. You want to go with they didn't let Rudolph play. Okay, all right, it's fine. Okay.
I said Xerxes. I meant Cersei from Game of Thrones. Lena Headey.
Yeah.
Lena Headey had a great and now I still haven't seen Rise of the Spartan, I think is what it was called, the sequel. I have to. I will eventually. Part of the reason why I didn't was because David Wyndham was such a great part of 300 for me that when I found out I don't think he came back at all for the sequel. I was like, I don't know. Like, I really liked his entire narrative idea, like how he told the story, and then at the end, he's like, we showed up with Grace's 50,000 fighters and drove them back to this. Like, that was great. Like, oh, that was such a great ending.
Immortals, we put to the test.
Right. The best part, I'm just going to start fanboying about 300 now, is the best part is, like, the king knelt down, his shield by his hand, the blood in his eye or something like that. And he's like, but he was not defeated. He dropped his shield so that he could have both hands to thrust the spear. I'm like, oh yeah, this is so cool.
It's like his helmet was stifling, and his target was far. He needed to see. Like, it's perfection. But again, we trying to go back and nitpick and dig stuff out so we can fit current narrative. And it's like it's so much more content out film wise that's made so much. It's so much crap that's out there. Like I said, we're so over inundated with content right now, and there's so much of it that's clearly not good.
Mm-hmm.
But we want to, brilliant visionaries like Zack Snyder, who will never get his proper credit. At this point, I've realized that he'll never get his proper credit for just the visionary that he is. We want to pick at stuff like the 300, which is a universally beloved movie, so we can pick out the Hunchback. Come on, man. Like you got to come up with better stuff than that. Like talk about anything else in the film. They can't. What? Yeah, her name in the movie was I think Gorgana.
Yeah.
Queen Gorga. Yeah, Queen Gorgana. They can't even.
Queen Gargo.
Yeah, Queen Gargo. They can't even attack her because again, and if you see the sequel, they took her thing in a completely it felt like a natural direction because she said in the first movie, speaking of, that was a black guy that was in the movie. The guy who came to basically punk the Spartans and got kicked in the hole. Talk about huh? That was the blackest guy in the movie. Just watch the parts that fit the narrative. So, like, when he was like, something about your women, and she was like, only Spartan women or something she said, but it was a great line.
It was Spartan women are equal.
Yeah, Spartan women are equal, and that got carried over into the second film near the end. So, the nitpicky stuff, and of course that would be on CBR.
Right. Cunts bitching relentlessly. So yeah, there's reasons why we're leaving this format behind, because the comic book industry does not care about us. So we do not care about them anymore. Except when we choose to care about them when we do reviews. On certain things. We will be very picky on what things we do. We should do it with the 300 films for a review.
Yeah.
Because I just looked up and apparently David Wenham is in Rise of the Empire, which is the sequel.
Yeah.
So I have to tune into that. David Wenham's best role was as that little dork in Van Helsing. He was Van Helsing's little stable boy.
Oh wow! Oh okay, gotcha. That one.
The best part was like the woman's like, "How can I repay you?" And like she says like, "May I bed you?" or something like that. And she goes, "No, is that offensive because you're a priest?" And she goes, "Well, I'm a friar, so it's cool."
That's another movie that while clearly not great, it had a lot of charm to it and stuff.
I love Van Helsing. You're right. Like it's not a movie that I'm going to sit here and go, "Oh yeah, it's perfection." There's especially with the CGI and the way they did the designs for some of the creations and monsters. I thought they missed the boat, especially with the brides, because you can't have three delicious looking honeys like that and then turn them all gray and veiny and I don't know, not really feeling you now. Like, you like dogs? That's cool. Long walks on the beach at sunset. I dig that. 38 different sexual positions. Score. Nope. You have to feed on the blood of virgins every 3 nights and you turn gray and veiny.
It's fun. I'm thinking about it now, like how great of a crossover it would have been with Blade. But I want Hugh Jackman opposite Wesley Snipes' Blade as Logan, not as Van Helsing.
Oh, that would be great. Blade and Wolverine. That would be great. Just flicks him off with his claws.
Yeah, like he did Scott.
Wait, it's me. Prove it. Okay. You're a dick. All right. This is the best decision in my history. Like I don't even fucking care. You've seen the blooper reels, right? Where they come running through the hallway and then fucking Spider-Man shows up. He's like, "Oh my god, wrong movie."
It's so good. Oh man.
All right, let's talk Stargirl season finale. Finally. So, it's basically a 35-minute fight scene. So there's not much to cover. And it's wonderful. I like the fact that with the addition of Stripes and Shining Knight, that they were, it made sense that they were able to combat the group as is. And it also helped that they did take away, I keep wanting to call him Mastermind, Brainwave. They took away Brainwave from the fight because he was in the chair. So basically the only heavy hitter was Icicle. And then you had Stargirl and Stripes, which you would think would be enough to handle him, and it turns out that it was. Then you took out the Dragon King by having I keep forgetting his Sir Jamie or whatever his name is, the Shining Knight, and then it was left to Our Man and I keep wanting to call her Thundercat, Wildcat, and they were taking on Tigress and Sportsmaster. So and because of the fact they had the numbers advantage, it felt very natural that the heroes would have the upside, and then it also felt very natural that they would win that initial skirmish, and then Grundy shows up and starts beating everyone a whole ham hock to hell. Oh,
Great CGI.
I have some. I don't know if I loved the CGI of Grundy as much as you did, and it's not because of a execution standpoint. I thought it was well done in the sense that it felt organic. I didn't like the design of him. So it's more of a personal preference, I think. I thought maybe he was a little too exaggerated in his facial features, but maybe that was also supposed to be part of the points. But he also kind of seemed like, I don't know if you noticed this, that he wasn't proportionally correct, but then again, that may have been the point. But usually when I saw Grundy in other forms of media, he was always proportional. So I don't know if that's what they were going for, because he had a much more elongated brow and his cheeks were a little bit more pronounced, and it made his eyes seem more sunken in, which, granted, when you think about it, good idea, but I don't know if it was executed in a way that made it seem like a good idea. But that's my personal opinion.
No, I 100% get it. That's a great point. And I think because we're coming from two different things in terms of us seeing Grundy and media, you're coming off of maybe Justice League, maybe last time you saw him, something animated. I'm coming off Gotham. So this is like that early 2000s Hulk movie and then the Incredible Hulk movie for me. So
it's like the Justice League television show, the live action one, and then fucking Zack Snyder's.
Yeah, exactly. We'll briefly get to Steppenwolf eventually, but it's like the Virgin Zack Snyder is gonna drop, like that guy's gonna drop the hottest mixtape of what's left of it. But yeah, I think it's funny we just got through talking about the Hunchback from 300 because he did kind of have Quasimodo-esque features, in a lot of ways. But again, like I said, I think, like you said, that was the point. Specifically, if Ito's been effing with him. So, hopefully we'll get a little backstory to by the line because we only just got hints and stuff of him. But I do like, and I've seen somebody mention this, they were like, these kids shouldn't have been, like, the fight was like too one-sided. They felt like on the hero side, but we have to remember in the fight we saw in the first episode, they had Shade in that fight on the villain side. They had the Magician on that side. And I think
Brainwave?
A couple more. Brainwave that gave them an advantage. Like Brainwave wasn't in that fight. They didn't have Shade. They didn't have a Magician. Obviously, Icicle was only going to do so much. And we already, I mean, hell, the Tigress and Sportsmaster got taken out at a house. So, and of course, I mean, you take Dragon King's sword out of his hand, he only gonna be able to do so much. We gonna take his mask off and scream at you. Can't breathe fire. Not that we know of. So, Grundy was the equalizer, but I thought it was great in terms of choreographing. Obviously, Rick did his thing. Obviously, they kept Midnight out of the fight, as she should be out of all fights. And I thought it was really well handled, man.
Yeah, it was fantastic. I loved everything about that fight scene. Like, I nitpicking about some of the effects aside, I loved the flow of it. I loved the fact that Stripes and Shining Knight, their additions made the comeback win, so to speak, so much more believable. But the one thing that kind of like twerked me a bit, I knew going into this, just if you know anything about the Grundy character, you know that he's not evil so much as he does the bidding of whomever summons him, essentially. And
Yeah.
he does still have the essence of a human in him. So him getting scared and curling back from Rick, I always knew was going to be the outcome. But going with Wildcat straight up murdering a dude, I was a little perplexed by that. Like, it made sense, like, and it will make more sense when you expand on it, but this is part of the problem that I have with some of the way TV shows, not just CW in essence, but TV shows do this kind of stuff. They don't really put the seeds of an action in there at times, but instead we'll wait 2, 3, 4, 5, 17 episodes later to explain, like, oh, when he turned, I was so overcome with rage. And I had to. Like, all right, like, that makes sense in hindsight, but where was the setup? And there wasn't any.
Yeah. I mean, they tried to plant some seeds with her, but it came off so randomly. Even when they tried to quote unquote plant a seed, when she was randomly gonna kill Henry Jr. in the hospital, and again, she never. By the time they get to the fact that Cindy was the one that sent out the news, it's gonna be like finally, instead of oh my God, they came back to us, like finally get it out the way, because at this point, but it felt random. I mean, it was cool juxtaposed to what she told Rick, and I like the way it was far better executed with Rick, because like you said, not only with the Grundy thing, if you know the backstory, but he's never properly had anything to put his anger to, in terms of like literally just like getting it off of him. So for him to get it off finally in the physical manifestation, using his bare hands against the thing that he was actually ultimately mad at, and then winning, and then like the whole thing about screaming at him to fight me back, I thought was good. And then they showing like the bit of like, I guess, creatural humanity in Grundy's eyes. Like I thought that was really well, because at his core, that's not who he is.
Right.
But he allowed to be consumed by all that rage and anger, so he could have something to drive him. Because that living with a shitty uncle, parents, died very unceremoniously, and not only that, he didn't find out how they actually died until he was already pissed off. So that made it worse. So
If you've never been so angry that you had to find a manifestation to take it out on, I applaud you. I have never been in a situation in my life where I can say that hasn't been me, but I've never taken it out on a person. I would always work a bag, or I'd go work out, or I'd do physical labor, because you feel so pent up. You just want to get that aggression out of you, because there is no target. Now, I've never had a giant mythological monster kill my parents before. I'm sure it's not fun. So I would have to imagine that kind of trauma, plus that kind of anger, plus the abuse he received at the hands of his uncle on a regular basis, certainly manifested into one hell of an ass whooping that needed to be had, and he gave it to someone. But when you get to that point where all that anger's out of you, and you come to your senses, it's kind of like when you're too aroused and you gotta like get one out, and then you're like, all right, I'm good. That's exactly what it's like on the other end of the spectrum. Sometimes you just need a release.
Yeah, they call it post nut clarity.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, this was post ass kicking clarity.
It was post ass kicking clarity. And with Yolanda, like I get it, and in a lot of ways she was, still very much obviously pissed off at about Henry Jr. specifically, because they never really got to reconcile. Probably in a way that would have been good for her, but because, like I said, it was like watching Magneto hem everybody up because they didn't think it was a good idea not to wear any metal to the fight, and then all of a sudden he gets taken out by a wooden arrow to the back. He was like, okay, who shot that? Like, where did that come from? Who shot it? Like, what's unceremoniously, like, Magneto is a level 5 mutant. He's badass in every iteration. Hopefully, I'm just throwing that out. I haven't seen every iteration specifically in the comics, but he's perceived to be one of the most badass in every iteration. And with Brainwave, it really doesn't make sense, because the reason of him doing what he did, which I don't know how he pulled that face thing off anyway, but the whole idea of I need this girl to tell me verbally where the people is, I'm like, you can read their mind. So unless your powers got dampened by you being on the machine, which apparently he could have looped last episode and just joined the fight. But that just really didn't make no sense. It's like they really had that moment so we could have a fake out with Henry's face and for her to kill him all of a sudden like that. And ultimately, I don't know if it was worth it, and specifically not going to be worth it if we don't explore the repercussions of her with that emotionally next season. Because she was all geeked up at the Christmas party like nothing happened. So,
I think a better way to have done it would have been to have her find Brainwave in the chair and maybe have them kind of, scuffle. And then basically, like, she tries to destroy the machine, but as we find out later, it's going to take something bigger than her claws. So it kind of comes to this conversation within herself, like, the only way I can stop this and save my friend's parents is if I have to kill him. And then he could taunt her and, like, you don't have the guts to kill me. I can see it in your mind. And then she thrusts, her claws into his throat and kills him because that's the only way she can save the world. That would have been a lot more organic of a scenario than, whatever they tried to do in that hallway. And I think there's some explainers that you can do. Like, he didn't change his face so much as he made her think he did because he altered her perception. Like, all right, fair, that makes sense. But the idea that she would go from 0 to kill 30, like that, I don't know. Doesn't make a lot of sense.
Even with that, if he could literally manipulate her mind to make him see a different face, read her mind to find out where they are.
I mean, again, that's the pit in 300. It's never going to be filled.
When you geek somebody up like that with powers, you have to make their takedown as badass and believable. Like Slade in season 2, walked into the lab, handed them their ass, and walked out. So when his takedown came, of all things, Felicity hitting him in the thing with the clear, and then Oliver, which he never saw coming, which was great, and then Oliver finishing the job because they was finally on the same level, it made all the sense in the world.
Mm-hmm.
Not that, I guess the miracle wasn't working this episode. No. Like that has to be addressed because he's been kicking people's ass all season. Like Oliver almost died however many times from fighting a Mirakuru soldier. So I mean, you got to deliver on stuff like that. Icicle's thing was a little bit more believable just because he was in a hyper emotional state, took a hell of a fall, and literally got caught out of nowhere.
Like that was the best part. Icicle is like getting up like goddamn Mortal Kombat. Like he's not done, and he's about to wreck shop. Can we just point out that the 12-year-old committed murder? How is he going to deal with that emotionally?
And the dog's complicit.
But the dog don't give a fuck. The dog's got his head out the window like, hey, what's up, guys? You want to go get some corn dogs?
Damn it, Chad. The freaking Mike's driving up. The dog's like, bad dog.
I think the Yolanda situation is also a prime reason why I think anime has become such a very popular thing in the West. There isn't any doubt whenever you see an anime scene because they're not afraid to do voiceovers.
Yeah.
And I think that's part of the thing, like, Marcus, when we talk about the best lines in My Hero Academia, we never really talk about the conversations. We talk about the voiceovers. And I was just watching, probably your favorite of the season, Red Riots where Fat Gum was getting ready for his big all shot, but he was still, a little bit, need a little bit more time. And the dude comes flying up, and then Red Riot comes flying, and he's like, if you break me, I'll just get harder. I'm like, all right, kid, you do you. But like, it's that kind of emotional context that describes like, whoa, why did Red Riot get back in the fight? He literally told you why. Did you not listen to the voiceover? And there's never any doubt over what happens because like Fat Gum will be like, because you gave me time, I had the power to end this fight. Like, all right, cool. But in these shows, they don't want to do that, and I don't know if they should, obviously. But there should always be at least a point in time where, like, maybe in episode 11, Yolanda goes, I don't know if I should get into this fight because I'm afraid that if I lose control, I might kill someone because of what they did to Henry Jr. Boom! You've set it up now. So now it doesn't matter if it makes sense or not. You can default to, well, she was highly emotional, and she, ganked the dude because she fucked with her ad. She even admitted episode prior that but we didn't get that. So it makes her scene all the much more confusing and finagling. Maybe that scene exists, and maybe it got cut.
Yeah, no, you're right about that. But the thing that definitely helps a lot of animes like, and it will be awkward for what you call it, but I think a lot of times with the live action, it helps to have previous scenes that can be
Built up to
related back.
or built up from.
Yeah, built up to, and then reflected upon in a moment and that actually shows the lack of development in these characters this season in a lot of ways that may have happened off screen. But again, when you have moments like that, you're gonna need the things that we may have not seen for the scene to hit harder. Like the reason why a lot of Deku scenes hit home in My Hero is because he's always recounting previous stuff that he's gone through and recalibrating it into the moments in which he can learn from it the most. And we oftentimes get that internal dialogue in those moments, or we'll get the flashback along with the dialogue. But you don't get that in the live action. Or you may get it. I think a great way that they did it in Arrow obviously was the flashbacks, because obviously we was getting a flashback and forth between when Oliver was fighting Slade in real time, and then obviously when he was fighting him when that place was collapsing and he stabbed him in the eye and all that stuff. But we didn't get that here. Like, there was no conversations that she may or may have not had about what was right or what was wrong. We just got that all of a sudden she needed Rick not to kill in this episode. It's like, but you threatened the guy at a hospital. You was finna kill this. First of all, you was finna walk up on him from behind and stab him because you're so pissed off. But Rick had far more reasons to try to kill this thing, which is not even a person, if you really want to think about it. Like, it's literally like this mindless, brainless monster, or so he thought, until he got close up on it. But when you don't have those setup scenes, it comes off as random. And they tried to do something building off on it when they was at the stadium. Like, she was sad and looked like she was contemplating it. But, the most emotional thing that we got from her all season was that scene with her parents when she tried to reach out to him, and it was like, no, we still think you're a hoe. Go to your room. So, hopefully now that we've gotten Courtney's build up emotional moments out the way with the father and stuff, which they did some great scenes with her and Pat this episode, which is MVP worthy. But we need to get more emotional stuff from those other kids next season, because it's not going to matter when they have those big moments.
Yeah, the two that really got kind of thrown to the side, and it's going to make every SJW woke blogger go, see? Dr. Midnight, I forget her real name, and Yolanda's characters got just shoehorned into this episode. They didn't have any emotional growth. They didn't have any real resolution. Their moments kind of felt fleeting and unnecessary and more, just wholly just blah. Like, you didn't need to kill the goggles. That made no sense. She sat there like, oh, they killed my goggles. Like, what? And I like her as a character. I think she was, I had my not issues, but I had my trepidations about her as Dr. Midnight. I really like the way they used her. Like, it made all the sense in the world. She's this geeky, intelligent girl, but she had no athletic ability, so they didn't make her into Billy from Power Rangers, where in season 1, he's like, oh, no, I can't fight. No, please don't hit me. And by season 5, he's like,
Keto.
No. It doesn't even make sense. Hapkido's not a striking martial art. Doesn't make sense. It's cool as fuck to say. Doesn't make sense. But you're right. Like the MVP of this was the Stargirl stripe scenes. I like the part where Pat tries to take control and he's like nearly dying because he's just bleeding out of the air. I like that. What was her name? Bethany? Was that Dr. Midnight? Beth?
Yeah, Beth.
Beth was like, Stargirl's like, yeah. Courtney's like, yeah. Pat's fighting back, and Beth's like, that's super bad. Don't make no.
Yeah.
He'll die.
Yeah.
And then Courtney's like, oh no.
But even with that, it's like, oh my God, Pat, stop! I'm your daughter, and I was like, ah.
He's like, Dad, stop! I called you Dad, and he's like, no, I'm good. Just think about that time you ruined my car.
Exactly. Which I hope he gets back next season. But because I actually just thought about that. He needs to get his car back. But even that moment afterwards, like I heard every word and like I meant every word. I'm like, see, every frustration that we went through with this character, they paid it off.
Mm-hmm.
I'm glad they paid off because again, I was like, this actress has everything they need to overcome this frustration acting, but it wasn't until that dad episode I was like, okay, I see the method to the madness now.
So flash forward to the end of the episode, because obviously the good guys win. The scene
Yeah.
that broke me, Marcus. The scene that got me so bad. Like, Marcus, I don't cry a lot when I'm watching shows. Maybe remember the Titans when Bertier says, "Are you blind, Alice? Can't you see that's my brother?" I get a little wispy then.
Okay.
But
Yeah.
but the scene that broke me in Stargirl, I got a little wispy again. They're at the Christmas party in Yolanda, who straight up murdered a dude. Couldn't be bothered. She's fine. Beth, who straight up lost her best friend, couldn't be bothered. She's putting sprinkles on cookies. She's fine. Rick, who seemed to be completely well adjusted after beating the shit out of Grundy, he's fine. And there's a little kind of a bonding between him and Yolanda. I still think it might be Rick and Courtney who get together. I wouldn't mind that being like kind of a love triangle for season 3. I'd dig that. Maybe we could even throw in Beth to make it like a love. I don't even know. All 3 chicks fall for Rick. I think that'd be hilarious. We've never seen that before in a superhero show. I say do that. But so Courtney kind of waves Pat over and she's like, "I got a gift for you," and it's the fucking box for episode 1. I'm like, ah. And I read like an interview, just like I read the title of the interview. Jeff Johns says that they pay off a scene in the season finale that they brought in season 1, and I was like, oh, it's probably gonna be dumb. And then I saw the box, I'm like, ah, no, don't cry. And then she hands it to him, and he's like, "What's this?" And she's like, "I made it for you." And then he opens it up, and it's the fucking gift that she was gonna give her dad in episode 1 when she was a little kid, and it's like, world's greatest dad or whatever. And I'm just like, I'm not crying, you're crying. I'm not crying, you're crying.
Even beyond that, the mom had the world's greatest mom mug, so now they got matching. And that was the second scene where the mom, and this is really great too, and I think an important undertone of like how like the biological parent in those blended families kind of have to kind of step back and let those bonds form between the step parent and the child naturally, and kind of had those moments, because she was standing there when Court kind of broke down and ran in his arms on the dad episode, when she probably really wanted to just scream at the world, and he kind of broke her down emotionally, like, just I'm here for whatever. And then in this scene when she saw that, so she knows she made the right decision, not only staying with Pat, but choosing them in the first place. Yeah, but that scene, between that and that scene, he was like, "What the freak are you doing here, Pat? Me to save my wife with what? Our daughter."
That was great. Oh, that was great. And she just fucking gets him from behind. I was like, oh, that's so good.
I don't know who's the bigger MVP. It's clear it's 2. I mean, I think Brett Bassinger as Stargirl is third, because Luke Wilson and the guy that played Icicle, Neil Jackson, like, just masterful performances from 2 separate things. I mean, like, he went from "I love you, I did this all for you, I want to do everything after this all for you," till I'm gonna kill you and then kill your daughter and your husband, right? I just want you to remember that on the way down. Like,
so it wraps up nicely. King Dragon gets killed by his daughter, and she sneaks off into the night somewhere to find some weird purple diamond thing. It's not explicitly stated that Sportsmaster and Tigress died, so assuming they're not dead, because if you don't see them die, they ain't dead. That's TV 101.
Yeah.
Then we saw that, because like, you're like, yeah, it sets up a real interesting season finale, or season 2, and I was like, all right, and then I see that they brought in, what was his name, Shade or Nightshade or whatever.
Yeah.
So I was like, oh, okay, that's what Marcus was talking about. Nope. They have a great scene where they fly around Blue Valley, and and Stripes and Stargirl land on this giant fucking water tower, and the flag's there, and they're all like staring at each other, all like, "Oh, I'm so proud of you," and I'm just like, it's so hammy. I love it. So corny, so good. But then we get to the actual finale of the season, where some dude walks up to the house that Pat used to live in because he was apparently like a landlord or some type of like what's the term? Not landlord, where he's the property manager of an apartment complex, I think. And the guy's like, well, Pat doesn't live here anymore. And then obviously it's goddamn Starman.
Lazarus Pit.
Right? So Sylvester Pemberton shows up, and I'm like, ah! And on one hand, I'm surprised. On the other hand, I shouldn't have been. Joel McHale's a big get. So, like, when he dies after one episode, I'm like, wait, that can't be it. And I even told you. Like, I think when we saw the first episode, I'm like, I bet you, Pemberton shows up in flashbacks throughout the year because he's too big of a name to get. I was wrong. He didn't show up in any flashbacks. But I was right because he does come back because he's too big of a name to get. And I think there's going to be a very interesting storyline in season 2 where Starman tries to get his staff back. That's going to be interesting. I cannot wait.
Yeah, you're not wrong. And I'm glad they're doing this with the dad stuff finally to rest. Mm-hmm. Because it'll remind... like if they had let that linger and she still didn't know the actual identity of her dad, you remember Dr. Doolittle at the end when the egg finally hatched and it was a gator and he
just goes, Mama!
Like, Mama? Like, no, Mama, no, don't look at me. I guess I didn't want her to be like that, but now it's like, because now the staff got to choose, because the staff got Courtney out of the house like a little eager puppy, like, let's go run. Like tapping on the door and stuff. It's always funny about that damn staff because it made sense this time when she was fighting Icicle and it froze and it fell to the ground with her and it couldn't unfreeze itself to the catcher, and Yolanda finally jumped off the tower, which was a full circle moment. She jumped off the tower that she initially couldn't jump off of in her debut episode to get Courtney. But a lot of times it's like this staff is so damn active, but if it falls on the ground in the fight, it don't pick itself back up. Mm-hmm. That's weird to me. So sometimes that staff is MacGuffin-ish in terms of how what they do it and don't do with it. But yeah, it's interesting because the staff's gonna have to pick now, and that's gonna be a thing. But we're also gonna have to get one hell of an explanation for why he's still alive, because it's gonna make Pat look real stupid. It was like, I thought you died, but apparently you just slowed your breathing on the field. It did. So that's gonna be very interesting, specifically when freaking the Shining Knight that went off looking for everybody else. It's like, this reminds me of when Carl went looking for the Kandorans, and the next season it was the Kandorans. And then she came back the following season. I didn't find nobody. Clark like, no. Oh, that sucks.
They were here the entire time.
Yeah.
So it's going to be interesting. I'm looking forward to it. Nightshade or Dr. Shade or Captain Shade. I forget his name. He's going to be the new villain for season 2, and Sylvester Pemberton's going to be an antagonist of sorts, I would assume, but maybe not a villain necessarily. So season 2 is shaping up nicely. And we also still have 2 trinkets not currently in the possession of anyone, being the Green Lantern ring and the Johnny Thunder pen.
Yeah, you're 100% right. Those school days are going to get interesting, too, because, I mean, you also have Icicle Jr. out there, right? Now, the funeral right now, their house is looking basically like them just standing in front of a cooler because of how their dad got left. And we don't... Maybe he still can be reanimated or something. We don't know. But, now that we kind of know that he's having his powers, that's going to be a slow development, hopefully. And the worst thing of the season by far is that, and this was in this episode, too, because they kicked it off with it, that damn Tuba kid. Tuba turd. Jesus Christ, man. He called Tuba turd. I was like, who they paying you for this?
Honest to God, when I started watching this episode, I'm like, is this the season finale, or did I miss something? Because how does it start, Marcus? It's my favorite trope in all of cinema. How does it start? 3 minutes prior.
3 minutes prior.
I'm of the mindset that if you have to go back in time to tell a story, don't tell the story. If Tuba Turd's entire fucking arc was so relevant, put it at the end of the episode prior. Don't go backwards in time, only to jump forward in time. I fucking hate that. It's so lazy. I don't know why. It's my irrational hatred of life.
Can you imagine
pizza?
That character moseying into the dungeon with his mom's fiddler going, it's not such and such. I'm Tuba Turd.
I am Tuba Turd.
What you call it? Calls it. Oh, perfect gag for the season. Now the kids are running stuff. I guess under Nightshade, maybe he's there. They're not depending on who he actually is. But obviously, I would imagine that Cindy's gonna try to be like the queen of the round table, and she calls him Tuba Turd just because she's a douche. And he tries to fit the fiddler, and like nobody's like, nope, we like Tuba Turd.
Are they gonna call himself the trumpeter, the tuba-er? Ugh. He is not set up for success. Don't play the tuba. Like saxophone, trumpet, clarinet, that's all good. Piccolo, hell of an instrument, hell of an alien. Like, can't go wrong there. Tuba, tuba and cello, you've already sealed your fate. If you have something so big that it actually encumbers you to go to school, nope, you fucked up.
And he hit somebody with that, man. He hit somebody with a damn tuba. Jesus.
What a dork. I know his dad stabbed someone in the ear with it, with his bow, but still, like, what a dork. All right, Marcus. We could talk about Stargirl another day. Doom Patrol season finale.
Yeah.
Hopefully not series finale.
Yeah, God, the DC gods be merciful. But yeah, season 2, episode 9. This season's penultimate in a minute season finale. This was called Wax Patrol. This episode, before the world comes to an end by the candle maker, the tarantula pops up out of nowhere and like, look, man, y'all need to save Dorothy. Stuff to hit the fan. I need y'all. So everybody, geeks up and goes to the fairgrounds, courtesy of Flint, and they end up, all gung ho to find out and the girl and potentially fight this entity. But what they end up going into is a trap because the candlemaker is already kind of waiting their arrival, and they find out that they end up having to face their childhood imaginary friend, which gets it all to the interesting hijinks that Chad's going to get into. Meanwhile, Jane ends up having to reflect on the first time Miranda became primary, which was a whole deep dive that I wasn't even expecting. And Dorothy has to, ultimately make a choice by the end because ultimately all this stuff around the candlemaker revolves around her. So, yeah, man, it was a very interesting episode.
So, I don't know about you, but key parties are weird. That's essentially what happened. Miranda, the primary, she lost her shit when her boyfriend, I think, named John, decides to have a key party and doesn't really tell his girl about it. Like, if you're gonna throw a housewarming party and then like masquerade it as a key party or like as an orgy or whatever the fuck it was supposed to be, I don't know, man. You're pretty shitty. That's essentially when so many fucking names in the show I can't fucking remember. Jane takes over. Because Miranda freaks the fuck out. She hops into the well, and Jane's like, all right, my turn. Jane's in the well, though. And even though Miranda's being questioned by the rest of the underground, Jane is nowhere to be found. She's in the well looking at dead bodies. Turns out Miranda's not the real Miranda. I'm saying Miranda so many goddamn times. I'm thinking about the Firefly movie, Serenity, where they just keep repeating the name Miranda. But Miranda's dead, and the entity that has come out of the well isn't Miranda. It's the soul of, Jane's actual real-life father, who is manifested as Daddy within inside the well, which is just, if they're trying to make Daddy an unsexually connotational kind of conversational point, I don't know, man. Like, I don't know. It's just weird.
Definitively sure that's what it is.
Yeah, essentially. Daddy is Miranda, and he found a way to get into Jane or whatever, the child, if you will, because Jane is actually the child grown up technically. So
Yeah.
it's like this whole big kerfuffle. So it kind of goes back to that season 1 situation where Daddy comes out of the well and fights Cliff. That wasn't some imaginary thing, apparently. At least that's kind of the context we're supposed to take away from it. That's actually him. So he's still within Jane this entire time, and now he's kind of in the driver's seat. It's all kinds of fucked up. It's a very weird thing. Dorothy ends up having to confront Candlemaker alone after the rest of the Doom Patrol get all gooped up with the wax, hence the term Wax Patrol. Overall, though, the episode kind of lingers on, what's going to happen. There was obviously supposed to be a second episode, and there wasn't. Not a second episode, a 10th episode. But there wasn't, so season 2 ends on a bit of a cliffhanger. Overall, though, I think the cliffhanger does work because it doesn't resolve the issues with the Candlestick Maker, who is the big bad of the season. And it doesn't really do anything to make season 3 less appetizing, which is kind of the hook, because you want the ability to draw into a third season or a second or whatever season you're on seamlessly. That's why most seasons that have another one greenlit will usually end on some type of hook, like with Stargirl. They resolved the issue with the Justice Society and the Injustice Society, but they left the dangling thread of Sylvester Pemberton. So now you tune in and find out what happens with Sylvester Pemberton. But this feels more like what happened with Titans. Remember where Titans season 1 ended with Etrigan coming into the real world and the rest of the Titans being outside of the house and they weren't able to get in, and the other Titans were kind of stuck on this other kind of realm, essentially, where they're stuck dealing with Etrigan and his abilities. But that's how the season ends, and we start season 2 in that same mode. I have a feeling that's how Doom Patrol is going to treat episode 9 heading into season 3, where they do a one-off episode like in Titans to resolve the Daddy Miranda stuff, as well as the Candlemaker and Dorothy stuff.
Yeah, I mean, right there. I mean, that's immediately what I thought about too. When Trigon, and that season, I think though, Doom Patrol is gonna feel more seamless with Doom Patrol just because of the hijinks that they're always getting up to anyway.
Mm-hmm.
And there's so many things that's left unresolved, specifically with the Chief, that I think it's gonna hopefully, like I said, we get a season 3. But it's gonna feel more seamless because it was clunky with Titans, in a lot more ways, because it felt like they tried to fit something that should have been drawn out better and built up to in a more significant way than how they had to climax it and then resolve it in the same episode. So I think Doom Patrol will be able to handle that better. But I like the episode a lot, specifically that beginning when Cliff finally got something he wanted. Finally got his daughter back, about to head to a wedding. That scene of him picking out shirts was hilarious. But even more so, that conversation feels like I have to go and support my family, and Larry just goes, "What the freak are we?" Like we are literally all we have. Like for everything that we've been through. And that's the one great thing about Doom Patrol. Like no matter what happens, they always end up showing up for each other. Even if they specifically don't want to, because Cliff still got a foot he needs to inject into Niles' rear end. But, just that whole showing up in there. Of course, Cliff's childhood imaginary friend would be Jesus. That whole thing. Of course, Larry wouldn't have time in his emotional torture to have an imaginary friend because, I guess technically it's living in him. And it's always great to see Cyborg with his dad. I think those two have great chemistry. But man, in a lot of ways they basically killed Cliff. Now that I think about it, because he got shattered into a bunch of pieces.
Yeah. Well, as long as his brain is fine, I think Cliff will be fine.
Yeah. But funniest line of the episode, they freaking show up, and Kipling has clearly had his ass kicked by something. And then he's talking, you're like, "You Muppets show up now." And then They walk around the corner and the freaking Cliff goes, "What in the Mike Tyson hell did happen?" Muppets, a Muppet shows up and just drags Kipling off to God knows where. Like it's just the stuff that this show is able to get away with and just execute so eloquently is just is nuts. And then Dorothy turning a almost Cro-Magnon man staff into, I don't even know what you call what she did, like a alien tuning fork or something she made. But yeah, that's interesting because she literally got yanked. He just yanked her up in the fire. So yeah, it was a hell of an episode, man. Like it sucks that they got cut short, but they did what they could with what they had, and that cliffhanger with the kids like going like, "You're not Miranda, are you?" And it's like, "No, no, no," straight fall about it. And freaking somebody get Michael Phelps to give Jane an award because she been down there for a lot longer than she's been a human good. So that's that, man. But yeah, it's been a really great season, man. They really brought a different vibe to even more depth level season 2, I should say. And I'm definitely looking forward to 3. Give these people a third. Don't swamp thing this show.
Considering that they had a lot of layoffs and a lot of problems kind of dealing with, just the direction of the company right now, I don't think it's going to be canceled, but if it were to be, I wouldn't be surprised.
Yeah.
But they're also trying to sell HBO Max.
Yeah.
And Doom Patrol, and I don't know how the ratings were for Doom Patrol on HBO Max. But as terms of content, it fits well with the idea. It's a very verbose, very over-the-top, very non-kid-friendly show. And HBO Max would do well with this show. Because it doesn't seem like it would be all that expensive at times to make this show, considering that most of the prosthetics are, plastic and paint. You don't have to CGI anyone. You don't need to CGI Stripes and Grundy. Most people just show up in their makeup. And for Cliff and Matt Balmer's character, who I always forget his goddamn name, they do voiceover work for most of the fucking season. So it's not like it's not even like they need to be in those suits. Those aren't them. So there's a lot with this show that kind of negates a lot of big price points, which should be at an attractive quality for HBO Max.
Absolutely, man. And all the awards, man, need to go to, again, Dan Guerrero, man. The way she executed that scene, because she was flipping. This is the first time we've seen her flipping back and forth between personalities without the effect, because this was before her incident. So, again, man, a masterful job done. Like I don't know if she gets the credit she deserves for what she does with that character. And yeah, I mean, it was really cool to see Jane's debut, and she handed those people their ad. Like she went from the therapist to Scarlet Harlot, to Miranda, and then to Jane. Like that's nuts. And it was also a unique thing in talking about the juggling of different personalities, because she was almost in the mirror trying to convince all the other personalities Miranda was that what she was doing was what was best for them, and like just keep letting me lead this game because obviously they can come out at any time. So the way they tackling mental illness and just the emotional bereft of these characters is it's some good stuff. But I didn't get your take on it because I think you had to watch it. How did you like last week's episode?
Well, you mean the episode before last week? Because technically last week was the season finale. It was fine.
Yeah, before. Yeah.
I didn't mind it so much. I'm always a big fan of any type of father-child kind of dynamic. So like, seeing Calder and Dorothy, out and about was very heartwarming. I like Kipling. He's a funny dude. So any episode where we get to see him, because he's done a lot of great stuff. Off the top of my head, I'm trying to remember who he played in. What was it? Battlestar. He played the lawyer in Battlestar, and he also played one of the main demons in Supernatural for a very long time. So the actor who plays him, Grant Mort. Nope. What's his name? Mark Shepard. Always love to see him. Always love to see him. I especially in this show, he fits very well with that kind of very flip it, very quick kind of delivery. So he's a nice introduction into any type of, or not a nice introduction. He's a nice inclusion into any show he's in. It was overall a fine one. Like, what else happened last week or the week before? Vic's dealing with the FBI. Because of the stuff that went down with Ronnie. I never really liked the Ronnie arc. So, it kind of made sense initially, but then as sometimes arcs do, it became bigger than it needed to be. The fight scene between them I thought was unnecessary. Because didn't they throw down in episode 7?
Yeah.
Just
Yeah, I like the chick a lot. It's just that does seem a lot of times completely separate from what we're getting in the overall thing. I mean, like I said, I like the actress, and that it's been cool to see that side of Cyborg trying to even explore a relationship, but it kind of has seemed completely separate. I like how they put her in there with them for the that episode with the Uma jelly and stuff like that, but that was kind of just an awkward one-off type of deal. But it will be cool to see her more integrated in a purposeful way with the storyline with everybody else. But the stuff with Dorothy I thought was it was interesting because that was it was an awkward but heartwarming moment she had with that gas station clerk. So.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I'm looking forward to seeing if we actually do get the wedding scene where Robot Man shows up to his daughter's wedding. I think that would be fucking hilarious. That would be great. More of that, please. I want more. I want season 3 to just be them doing normal things for the entire season. Like, how great would that be if we had an entire episode of Cliff trying to learn how to cook in a cooking class, just so he can make his daughter something to eat. Like, that would be hilarious. Or fucking Negative Man. Well, I can't remember his name. Is trying to throw a birthday party, so he has to go out and get balloons. Just random shit that wouldn't be funny in a normal context, but with these 5 is hilarious. Or maybe Crazy Jane's trying to audition for a play, but because all of her personalities want a shot, that they just think she's a really great actress, so they give her the role anyway. That would be fucking great.
She went out for 4 different parts on one audition.
Be even better. Oh, that's a great idea.
And then all of a sudden, this sends Rita into a tailspin because she's still struggling with these damn plays. Oh, man.
Yep. Oh, that would be great. Yes, please. Would you say this season was as good as season 1?
Yeah, I would. I put it up there with season 1. I mean, obviously, like I said, I think it went deeper. It was very. If you didn't get off into the characters with season 1, I think it was easy to tag along because you had if for nothing else than the freaking Mr. Nobody's narration and just effing with the group, and then to cap that off, and this is before obviously the Rat Roach scene. But to cap that off in the middle of all that torture with a rat's revenge on a robot,
mm-hmm.
and that be almost like a top tier level storytelling of the revenge of Senior Capitan Whiskers or whatever he named him. It was massive. But I just think this, like I said, I feel like this season went deeper and stuff, and a lot of that had to do with the masterful job that the young lady who played Dorothy did. She came in and she owned every bit of that role. And that's not easy to do when you're going against Diane Guerrero and Matt Bauman, like you said, Ren Frazier, who is almost pulling off I'm actually there performance in a booth because of the way that they play it. You actually feel like they're under those suits, which is not easy to do. A lot of times that don't always necessarily mesh up on shows. So they got some great actors on that show, man. So kudos to them.
So let's move on and cap off this episode by talking about why The Last Man. Why? Because I said so. Ha ha. I'm sorry. That's terrible. Oh well. So Marcus, we got through the book.
Yep.
And the final few issues, I would say fall flat. Personally speaking.
I'm right there with you, man. Specifically, when one thing happened for me, I was like, I can't flip my laptop, but if I was reading this book hard copy, I'll be done through it somewhere.
Now we're gonna spoil everything. I mean, duh. So,
Yeah.
what scene or book or what have you specifically made you want to flip the laptop?
I think what it was. It was 58 or 59. It was a death of 355. Like
Yeah.
we went through all this entire journey, and then obviously they gave us the him and Beth thing, and then immediately yanked it away with ironically enough a perfectly logical explanation, but at the same time it was like a blue ball cock tease type of deal. Um, but ultimately, he came to the realization of what we kind of knew, and it immediately got taken away. And I'm like, you gonna bring me all the way here for this? And I don't know. It's like I immediately checked out after that, and then at that point I was just like, you know what? Let's just see how this ends, because I'm checked out. They won't let him have no good things. They won't let us have no good things. So it kind of fell flat. Plus, they also threw an issue in there about a play in those last few issues. I'm like, I don't care.
Mm-hmm.
I get it. In this world, I mean, because we have to know other things that's going on outside of obviously this group, and they've done a great job with that. But they did. I think they peaked with that when they did when they did that town with all the women from the prison. I think that's where that peaked. I don't care about these women doing these way off Broadway plays, and then we get the last few pages when it's Uric and 355. So
So, basically, it's just so much stupidity as to the resolution. I think when you look at, say, the book The Walking Dead, they never explained how the zombie outbreak started. The book ends without an explanation, and it works. There's nothing to scoff at. There's nothing like, huh, and it works. This book, however, not so much. They kind of set up one explanation in Motherland when Yorick actually runs into the other last man, Dr. Man's father. He tried to create clones, and he believed that by creating clones, he created some type of, environmental disaster that killed all the men. Later on, we find out that the group, allegedly, that 355 belonged to, the Culper Ring, they were responsible because they had released a biological agent in China designed to prevent women from conceiving male children, but it ended up going sideways and killed all men alive. Obviously, this is not the book doesn't really say which one for sure is true because there's a lot of debate about, well, he didn't believe her, and, Dr. Man is clearly crazy, older male Dr. Man. So, there's no real resolution as to how it started, but it gives you two real flimsy ones, and the second one being a lot more, I guess, on point, I guess. The idea that, people would want to get rid of male children, that's not far-fetched today. It's not. There's some people who hate men that much. So
yeah.
It does kind of have some semblance in reality, but also dumb. I love the fact that Yorick finally meets up with Beth in France and they fuck, and then Beth's like, I was gonna dump you, and then he's like, bitch, I'm out of here. I spent 3 years looking for you. Nah, I'm good.
Oh, great line in that particular exchange. So you would dump the man but marry the last man?
Yep. I mean, granted, if that's the only way you can get it, kid, all right, I'll be the last option. Because what else is she gonna do? Because here's the thing, and this will piss off a lot of the Wonder Woman fans who want to believe whatever that schmuck's name is. Like, I totally believe Wonder Woman's bi. But guess what, people? Your sexuality is not something you can choose. You can't just flip a switch and be like, yeah, I'm totally gay now, or I'm totally straight now. So there's about 4.5 billion women on this planet, and give or take 4 billion of them or straight, that's going to be a bad time. So the end of the book comes around with Yorick now like 90 years old or 80 years old or something like that in an asylum because he's trying to kill himself because he wants to die because he's crazy and old, and it was poorly put together. And now there's a bunch of other Yorks running around. They're baby Yorks because they're like, we'll clone them. And I guess the idea is that they'll clone the Yorks, and then the Yorks will have biological children with the women, and that's how they'll repopulate the Earth. And I'm like, in terms of controlling the population, that's a smart-ass idea. Kill off 85% of the world and then, like, concentrate in, like, one little area and then spread out. But in terms of, like, options, if you're not attracted to skinny, white, middle European dudes, oof, you are not going to be having a fun time.
The reason why he benefited a lot because a lot of those women, and pardon the I guess the brashness with it was they was lonely, very lonely and dickless.
Mm-hmm.
So and he for all his shortcomings, he is not inherently a douchebag. Like 355 said, like you're actually a quality dude, and that was before this whole thing broke out. But I think ultimately, like the greatest thing about this book was because of how it was positioned, you would think it would be how the last man would imprint and how he would influence a world with nothing but women, but it ended up being the opposite of how this world full of women ended up entailing his personality and his way of looking on the world. And this was not that kid that finally left that apartment with that monkey to go out and see what the freak was going on. Is not the guy we ended up with in that hotel room when 355 died.
Mm-hmm.
So it came full circle in a lot of ways because it actually mattered to him about certain stuff that had happened as opposed to just focus. I mean, he even told Beth that she was like, nothing that happened mattered. He's like, no, it all matters. And it all matters because like when he obviously the woman he had the kid with, the pirate lady, the lady who died in that prison town, Beth, but ultimately 355 and Dr. Man, who your dad was nuts, by the way. Like he absolutely deserved to die. His dad was freaking nutbag. But that was it was some good stuff. But those final few issues, it was like, did y'all really in this with a bunch of doppelgangers, one of which came off like the Vulture. And by the way, I guess every Europe got a monkey too. So
I'm not mad about that at all. I think we all need a monkey companion. At least one small enough to ride a dog. I'm just saying. It's cute and adorable. The idea that, they would clone Yorick and all right, it was set up earlier when Dr. Man's daughter, that Dr. Man's like, yeah, I've been working on cloning. It's like, oh, okay, this is obviously a plot point we're going to come back to. But also, why didn't New York just go, how about I just have the fun that every guy has always wanted and just go to baby making town, right? Just saying. Makes sense. Can't even in a world where he's the last dude, he can't indulge. Like, fucking hell.
And they kept killing off all the women he probably should have banged and or ended up with. Even the chick with the workshop, which was funny because they was like, even drunk, they had a conversation like, I wouldn't have effed you before, so why should I now?
I mean, that's a woman who knows her principles.
Yeah.
I get it. I respect that. So, it's a seminal classic. Everyone talks about it, but ultimately I don't think it lives up to the hype. Brian K. Vaughan, I think, was the one who did it. Let me just double check that. Back, up. Yep, Brian K. Vaughan. And he's done a lot of great stuff. I just don't think this is honestly one of them. I think it's a solid book. It's worth reading to kind of know where where the entry point is to what is considered good, but I wouldn't sit here and put it over as one of the most impressive books I've ever read. It's just a unique concept where women were the majority, and that I think is the selling point for a lot of people saying it's really good.
Yeah, and I mean, this was such a interesting palate cleanser from Garth Ennis, who takes you on a ride, if nothing else. But yeah, I mean, it's some a lot of stuff to be gained from this because they did play on a lot of stuff that is plaguing our society in a lot of ways, from where it be gender perspectives or what have you. But also a lot of propaganda and whatnot. But um, yeah, man, life comes at you fast, even in a 5-year journey. Um, but yeah, like I said, it's a good book, good solid book. I don't necessarily know if it's anything that switches like the concept of how stories are written in comics or anything like that. But I do think it is something that you could get off into. And it's like we talked about with Zach. It's not that difficult of a read. It won't be something that you need to sit on for days and like, what did that just happen? Like that whole deal. So, I'd recommend it to somebody because we obviously know far worse titles at this point. So,
You're not wrong. I would just say that it's not exactly the book that defines what graphic novels can be. I think it just flies underneath that radar because it's still got some solid concepts, but I think overall there was something that they could have done more with at times. Like maybe indulge the idea of York being with a bunch of women. Like that seems like a very realistic idea for a lot of dudes. They did tackle it once with like the idea of that shop maker who's like, I wouldn't fuck you if there were 60 dudes here instead. Like, so why would I do it now? Like that makes a lot of sense. But there's also a lot of people who will tell you like sometimes they just want to fuck, and they'll do like whoever walks through the door. So it's kind of one of those things where I wish they would have explored more about the sexuality aspect of what it's like for a bunch of straight people to not have a companion to be with. They touched on it at times, but there's so many different elements to this that they could have gone through. And I feel like they really kind of missed a lot of the possibilities in that regard. So good, I would say not great. And we're going to be doing Legion of Superheroes next, but I don't exactly know when. But it's going to be interesting. How long do you think it would take for you to get through the 2 seasons?
uh, let's see. Who's look at that episode.
I think it's like 30, 40 episodes. It's 2 seasons.
Yeah, a good week. A good week should work.
Okay.
What about you? What you think would be nice, just in case stuff come up? Because I know you be you be writing a million articles a week.
I would say the end of the month, the 27th. Reconvene,
Okay.
take a week off, give us plenty of time to kind of simmer and slide into something new. Because the idea behind this new concept isn't that we do it every week, it's that we do it when we have gotten to the point where we need to be at. So
Yeah.
that way we have more time and allowances. And I think starting to get into a mindset of every other week at least, or at most, I should say, would be a good way to jump into it. So conditioning ourselves at every other Thursdays when we do this, I think is the way to go. But not necessarily any other week, because it could be 3 weeks, could be 4 weeks. Depends on what we're viewing, how much of it we're viewing at once, on top of everything else we got going on. So I think at least for this, because it's only 40 episodes, give or take, I think we can knock that out in 2 weeks and then reconvene on the 27th and
Yeah, I
hammer
think
it out.
yeah, I think it says here 26.
Oh, even
So
even easier then. So that'll work.
yeah, yeah.
So I'll send this along to Zach, and we'll be back on the 27th to do Legion of Superheroes. See if Kids WB could finish out their superhero run with something classic. Because I've never seen it
Yeah.
before. So should be interesting. All right. That's it. That's all we got for you guys this week. By the by, apparently Jimmy Havoc has been released from AEW, Marcus.
Mm.
It looks like he was released because he was British, not because he was an asshole, however. Because Babe Priestley and some Sadie Gibbs was also released. I don't know where Babe Priestley is from. I thought it was England. And I don't know where Sadie Gibbs is from, so.
Oh.
So, there you go. Jimmy Havoc's finally released, but it's not for any good reason, so. Fuck you. All right, we're done. RealNerdCorp.com, RealNerdCorp.com. We're also on Twitter at NerdCorp, on Instagram at Real Nerd Corp. We are on our personals. Marcus, you can be found on Twitter at ParadoxKid, ParadoxKid.
It's me.
You can also find me on. Oh nope, you have another podcast. It's the True Penny Show on Twitter. TruePennyShow. So go check him out on there. I'm on Twitter at Chad NerdCorp, ChadNerdCorp, and on Instagram at Chad's Photo Hut. I kind of fucked up the ending. So RealNerdCorp.com, Twitter, Twitter's NerdCorp, Instagram is Real NerdCorp. Not that hard. Links to everything is on the website, RealNerdCorp.com. Links are also down below, or in wherever you found the download, or the YouTube or whatever. So yeah, it's easy. It's fucking easy. Not that hard. Marcus, I guess now is the time to say goodnight. We'll see you guys on the 27th. Marcus, say goodnight.
Good night, me.